Okay, let's get into it. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Aphrodisias. It's one of the most, just stunning and artistically rich ancient cities in Anatolia.
It really is, tucked away deep in Inner Camarilla.
Right. So if you're trying to get a handle on why this city matters so much, here's our mission today. We need to figure out how Aphrodisias, which was, miles and miles from Rome, used its local goddess and its art to get these incredible imperial privileges.
And then how they celebrated that unique status.
Exactly. Celebrated it in some of the most monumental, high-quality marble artwork the Roman world had ever seen.
It's a remarkable case study, really, in urban diplomacy and just sustained cultural brilliance. And Aphrodisias wasn't some sudden Roman invention.
No, it was ancient.
The area's been settled continuously since the late Neolithic period. We're talking around 5800 BCE. But you're right, its absolute peak happens during the Roman imperial period.
It's a city that really learned how to make itself indispensable to the empire.
It absolutely did.
And that crucial connection to Rome, it starts incredibly early, with one man who seems to have pulled off this massive political sleight of hand.
You're talking about G. Julius Zoilos.
G. Julius Zoilos. The sources describe him as a freed slave of Octavianus. He comes back to Aphrodisias, a wealthy, influential man.
And crucially, helps secure these major concessions for the city in 39 BCE.
And these weren't, minor administrative tweaks.
Oh, no. These were monumental for any city under Roman control. Aphrodisias was granted a major tax exemption and the right of asylum for the Temple of Aphrodite.
The right of asylum. Think about that. A sacred space where even the Roman state couldn't just walk in and grab someone.
Exactly.
So why would Octavianus, the future Augustus, grant this kind of favor to a city in Caria? What was in it for him politically?
It's pure political calculus. He's consolidating power after the civil wars. By granting these rights, he's buying the loyalty of key elites in the East, like Zoilos.
Securing a faithful strategic city.
Precisely. And in return, Aphrodisias gets the status and stability it needs for its economy, and especially its famous sculptural school, to just explode. It created this deep reciprocal relationship.
A relationship they would then celebrate in marble for centuries.
Validating Roman rule, but in their own Greek artistic language.
And that celebration is just crystallized in one monument. The sources describe it as maybe the most extravagant of imperial temple complexes in the whole of Anatolia, the Sebasteion.
That is a massive title to live up to, and the dedication tells you everything. It was dedicated to their local goddess, Aphrodite, sure, but also to the Julio-Claudian emperors.
And specifically the deified Augustus.
Whom they called Sebasteion, yes. The construction starts surprisingly early, under Tiberius, somewhere between 14 and 37 CE.
So, if Zoilos laid the political groundwork, the Sebasteion was the physical monument to that deal. What did it actually look like?
The sheer scale it's almost overwhelming. Picture a 90-meter-long processional way.
Almost the length of a football field.
Right. And it's flanked on both sides by these 2 3-story portico buildings. And the upper 2 floors of those buildings were basically giant marble billboards containing an estimated 200 high-relief panels, all carved from that pristine local marble.
Wow. 200 panels. It's like an ancient three-dimensional graphic novel of imperial power. So what was the big message they were all broadcasting?
The main message was the Pax Romana, the Roman peace brought by the Julio-Claudians. But what's so clever is how they domesticated that power.
How so?
By dedicating it to Aphrodite and the emperors, they visually confirmed the imperial family's own claim of lineage from Aphrodite, from Venus.
So they're saying our local goddess is your founding ancestor. Our identity is integral to your success.
You've got it. It's brilliant.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The Sebasteion didn't just deal in myth. It literally defined the borders of the known world as Roman property.
It did. The sources point to 3 specific high-relief panels displayed right up on the 3rd floor of the south portico that show the geographical limits of the empire.
They're like giant visual boundary markers.
Exactly that. We can start at the farthest western point, the Claudius and Britannia relief.
Referencing the campaign of 43 CE, when Claudius finally conquered parts of Britain.
Correct. And Britannia is shown as a kneeling captive woman. She's completely subdued, physically dominated by the armored Emperor Claudius. The message is just blunt.
Outright brutal conquest, total subjugation.
The power of Rome is its boot on the neck of the barbarian West. No subtlety there.
Okay, so then let's swing all the way to the other side. The farthest eastern limit, the Nero and Armenia relief.
This one references Nero's campaign in 58-59 CE. And what's fascinating here is the total change in tone.
It's not another conquest scene.
No. Armenia is also a kneeling woman, nearly naked, but Nero is shown actively helping her to rise. It signals a shift from conquest to, controlled governance.
Or maybe a kind of perceived liberation, a more palatable message for the Greek East.
It's a much more diplomatic form of propaganda. It shows the empire was self-aware enough to adjust its messaging.
And I think you mentioned that pieces of this are still being found, right? The archaeology is that recent?
That's one of the most exciting parts. As recently as 2015, a fragment of an arm that perfectly matches the Armenia figure was identified in the excavations.
Incredible. It's a puzzle still being put together.
It really is.
So you have East and West, and linking them is the Augustus relief, which shows his overall dominance, his universal authority.
Right. He stands flanked by two personifications defining the totality of his power.
The first one is the land.
The land, or Gaiaji. She's depicted as a woman with this serene, oval face, and she's presenting Augustus with the cornucopia, the horn of plenty.
Symbolizing the prosperity his peace brings to the earth.
Exactly. And the second figure is the sea. She's personified as Tritones, a woman with a really strong, muscular neck, and she's twisting her body to present Augustus with a ship's rudder.
So, complete naval mastery, control over all trade and traffic, land and sea.
Augustus controls the entire known natural world. That's the message.
Looking at that Augustus relief, it's not just the message, it's the artistry. It has this pyramidal composition with Augustus right at the top.
Right.
Why is that specific choice so significant?
Well, connecting it to the broader history of art, that's not an accident. It's a deliberate artistic echo. It visually links it to these powerful, high-drama Hellenistic works.
Like what?
Like the famous Alcyoneus, Athena, and Gaia group from the Pergamon Zeus altar.
So they weren't just making a Roman statue.
Yeah.
They were deliberately placing Roman propaganda into a long tradition of high Greek art.
Precisely. It shows the persistence of this Hellenistic intellectual tradition. They were referencing established, respected art to give legitimacy and intellectual weight to their Roman propaganda.
The sculptors were saying, we speak the language of power, but also the language of genius.
That's a great way to put it.
Which brings us right to them, the sculptors themselves. Aphrodisias was famous for its sculptural school, mostly because of the amazing quality of the local marble from Göktepe.
The prestige of that school was just immense, and it lasted for centuries. We have found signatures from sculptors, names like Apollonios, Alexander, Menippos, that show the school was active from the mid-1st century BCE all the way to the early 7th century CE.
And these weren't just local artists. They were famous.
Oh, yeah. We know Aphrodisian sculptors were so highly regarded that they were commissioned to work in Rome and Greece. They exported their talent.
So when they carved these Sebasteion reliefs, were they just, cranking out standard imperial images, or was there a unique Aphrodisias style?
It was far from standard copying. Their real strength was this masterful synthesis. They combined the strong technical traditions of the classical period with the high drama and emotion of the Hellenistic period.
You can see that Pergamon influence you mentioned.
Definitely. In the Agoragate reliefs, you can really see that Pergamon Baroque style.
What does that mean exactly? If I'm looking at it, what am I seeing?
It means strong emotions, dramatic, deep folds in the clothing, figures that are almost bursting out of the stone in these dynamic poses. But they didn't just copy. They fostered real creativity, injecting their own flair into the Roman template.
But that moment, that brilliant fusion of art and politics tied to the Roman emperors, it couldn't last forever. The sources outline a pretty difficult decline.
It was a long, slow process. The city struggled during the 3rd century crisis. Then, as Christianity became dominant, the cultural changes were profound.
The city was actually renamed.
Yes, to Staropolis, the city of the cross, probably in the 6th or 7th century.
And the most symbolic change of all involves the Temple of Aphrodite itself. It's kind of heartbreaking to think about.
It was physically converted into a church, a huge 3-aisled cathedral for St. Michael around 500 CE. This wasn't just a redecoration, it was a massive architectural project that literally built the new religion on top of the old one.
And then came the earthquakes.
Massive earthquakes in the 7th century accelerated the decay. The population shrank, political life faded, and the huge theater hill was turned into a fortified citadel for the few who remained.
Which leads us to one of the great stories of modern archaeology, the rediscovery. It sounds like something from a movie. with the Turkish photographer Ara Güler in 1958.
It really is an incredible anecdote. He was on assignment, got completely lost driving back, and stumbled into a village called Gare.
A village built literally on top of the ancient city.
Literally. And his story was one of just total visual shock. The villagers were using these pristine, ancient marble artifacts in their daily lives.
You don't just mean little fragments.
No, we're talking whole sarcophagi being used as grate presses, ancient columns holding up the roofs of houses. History was the actual foundation of the village.
And his photos of this created a sensation.
They were published internationally and caught the eye of Professor Kenan Erim, who started the systematic excavations in 1961.
And what was the question that drove his life's work?
Erim asked the perfect academic question. If Aphrodisian sculptors were considered the best masters working even in Rome, what must their work look like back home, where they had unlimited access to that incredible marble? That question still drives the work today.
And fast-forwarding to today, the 2015 reports show that preserving this legacy is a continuous battle.
A huge one. The most persistent problem is high groundwater. The land is wet and it threatens the foundations. It requires constant pumping.
They're also doing a ton of conservation work, right, on places like the Hadrian Baths.
Yes, focusing heavily on the hot room, the caldarium, and stabilizing the underfloor heating systems, the hypocaust. It's painstaking work, just as complex as the digging.
And while they conserve, they're still finding new things.
Absolutely. Recent digging on Tetrapylon Street turned up brick arches and clay heating pipes, tubuli, which strongly suggests they might have finally located the Jerusi bath. A huge find.
So let's bring this all together. What does Aphrodisias really teach us about the relationship between art and empire?
I think Aphrodisias is this brilliant example of a deeply artistic, profoundly self-aware city. It performed a masterful cultural maneuver. It used its own elite Greek sculptural traditions to articulate and solidify its unique political status within the Roman Empire.
It literally carved the limits of the world, from Britannia to Armenia, in its own local marble,
ensuring its place right at the center of the imperial story.
That is just a profound act of self-definition. The Sebasteion was built to demonstrate eternal Roman power through conquest. Think of that Claudius and Britannia panel, right? A forever subjugated border. Yet, the sources tell us about the massive earthquakes and about Ara Güler finding those proud imperial reliefs being used to press grapes. So here's a final thought for you to consider. How often does the powerful, eternal political message an artist is paid to create actually outlast the civilization that commissioned it, only to be found centuries later, scattered and repurposed as humble building rubble?